forest road into Dale's 80 acres hasn't been graded since 2019, and I know every hole in it by the way the truck talks back. There's a washout past the second corner that'll take your oil pan if you're daydreaming. There's a low spot before the gate that holds water until January. I could drive this road blind. Some years it feels like I do. Cody's in the passenger seat with his boots up on the dash, which his father hates, which is why he does it. He hasn't said much since Grand Rapids. He's got a paper cup of gas station coffee going cold in his hand, and he keeps turning it without drinking it. It's the 4th of November, and it froze hard last night. The first real freeze, the kind that turns the swamp grass silver and makes the whole world sound different. Tamarac's gone gold along the low ground and dropping its needles. The popples bare. Everything smells like cold iron and rot, which is the best smell there is, and I've been chasing that smell every November since I was 14 years old. I'm 32 now. That's 18 seasons on this land. My old man was around in the way a bill collector is around. Dale Bergstrom taught me how to sight in a rifle when I was in 8th grade because Cody asked him to, and he never once made it a thing. Never made a speech about it. He just handed me a box of shells and told me to quit flinching. And then he stood behind me for 2 hours in a gravel pit outside Deer River until I quit flinching. That's the entire conversation we ever had about it. 18 years. And that's the whole thing. The gate's already open, which means Dale beat us here. Of course he did. He'd have left the house at 3 a.m. to do it. The shack sits at the top of a rise, where the jack pine thins out, and it is not much of a shack. Plywood and tar paper, and a green metal roof that Marcus put on the summer he turned 20. One window on the south wall, out of a house they tore down in Big Fork. A barrel stove that will cook you out of your sleeping bag if you load it wrong. There's a meat pole between 2 jack pines about 30 feet off the door, and a come-along hanging from a nail on the corner post, and a pile of split birch under a tarp that never gets used up. Dale's truck's parked crooked in the yard. That's new. He always backed it in square against the woodpile, every year, like a man setting a table. He's in the doorway when we pull up. He's got his coat on inside, which is also new. I get out first. The cold takes the inside of my nose right away. He looks like a photograph of himself that's been left in a window. It's been 3 months since I saw him, and something's gone out of his face, some structure underneath it, and his neck doesn't fill his collar anymore. His hands are the same. His hands are still enormous. He's holding the door frame with one of them, and I understand immediately that he's holding it because he needs to, and I decide, right there in the yard, that I am never going to look at that hand again. Nobody in this family has said the word out loud, not once. Not on the phone in August when Marcus called me, not in the parking lot at the clinic in September when I drove Dale home because Cody was working, not now. The arrangement is that we all know, and we all shut up about it, and we come up here in November, and we do the things we do. And that's how the Bergstroms handle a thing like this. I'm fine with the arrangement. It's the only one I've got. Cody comes around the truck with his rifle case, and his father looks at him for a second too long, and Cody looks at the ground. There's a lot underneath that, and I'm not going to pretend I understand all of it. Some of it's from February. Some of it's older than February. Cody's 28, and he's been out of the sober house since April, and he's been solid. He's been really solid, and his father still can't look at him without counting something up behind his eyes. He'd never say so. That's not the problem. The problem is that he'd never say the other thing either. Marcus is already inside. I can hear him swearing at the propane lantern. I stand in the yard a second longer, with my breath going up in front of me, and the light already going amber and low the way it does at 4 p.m. this time of year, and I have the feeling I get every single time I come up this road, which is that everything worth anything in my life happened inside these 80 acres, and that I don't have a legal or blood claim on 1 square foot of it. Then Dale says my name, and I go in.
You made decent time. Road treat you okay past the washout? I filled it with 2 loads of gravel in September, and it ate both of them like it was nothing. That whole side hill's coming down. Has been since your first year. Get your stuff in, and get the stove going before you take your coat off. Marcus has been fighting that lantern for 20 minutes because he won't read the mantle package. And Ruben, hey, I'm real glad you came up.
Friday night in a deer shack is the best night of the year, and everybody in here knows it, which is why nobody says it. The stove gets hot enough that Marcus has to crack the door. We eat what we always eat, which is venison from last year, browned up with onions and a can of cream of mushroom over egg noodles, and Cody makes it because he's the only one of us who can cook, and because it gives him something to do with his hands. Dale eats about 1/3 of what's on his plate and moves the rest around, and nobody comments on it. Marcus takes it off him when he's done and finishes it without a word, standing up at the counter, which is the closest thing to tenderness that man is capable of in a lit room. Marcus is 36. He works maintenance at the paper mill, and he's got a wife in Cohasset and 2 girls, and he carries himself like a guy holding a door open for people who are taking too long. He's been doing the runs to Duluth. He's been sitting in the plastic chairs. He's been getting the phone calls at 6 in the morning about what the numbers were, and he's been the one deciding what to tell his brother. And he's been deciding to tell his brother almost nothing. And that decision is sitting between them at this table like a dog nobody wants to acknowledge. We talk about the wind. It's out of the northwest, and it's supposed to swing south by Sunday, which will ruin the ridge stand. We talk about a doe with a bad hip that Dale's seen on the trail camera 3 years running and named Gimpy, and about the wolves that came through in March and dropped a yearling right where we're sitting, more or less, and left a red patch in the snow the size of a car. Then Dale gets out the map. The map is a plat book page from 1988 that he's laminated and covered in pen, and it's got every stand on it and every crossing and every rub line he's ever found, going back before I existed. He spreads it out on the table and puts the lantern on the corner and starts assigning stands for the morning, like he's done every opening eve for as long as I've been alive. And I watch him do it, and I think about how this is a thing that is happening for the last time in a room where nobody will say so. He gives Marcus the ridge. He gives Cody the north swamp edge, which is the best stand on the property. And Cody's face does something complicated. He gives me the pines. The pines are mine. They've been mine since I was 16. He takes the low stand by the beaver flowage for himself, which is 140 yards from the door. And he says it's because the deer are moving through there, and it is not because the deer are moving through there. It's because it's 140 yards from the door. Later, when Dale's gone to his bunk and Marcus is out at the truck, Cody and I are on the step with the door shut behind us and the cold coming up through the wood into my back. The sky's gone absolutely clear. Up here with no light for 40 miles, the stars are stupid. They're obscene. There's too many of them, and they hang too low. And every year I forget, and every year it gets me. I've known Cody since we were 9. I've hauled him out of 2 vehicles and 1 apartment. He was in the room when my mother died, and I did not ask him to be there. He was just there, and afterward, he sat with me in a hospital hallway for 5 hours and said almost nothing. And it was the single best thing anybody has ever done for me. He's got his hood up and his hands in his sleeves, and he's looking at the meat pole.
He gave me the swamp edge. You know what that means. He's never given me the swamp edge. Not once. That's Marcus's stand, or it's his stand. And this year he just hands it to me across the table like it's nothing. Like he's cleaning out a drawer. And I'm supposed to sit there and say, thanks and pass the noodles. I keep waiting for him to say something to me. Just one thing. He's got, months? And he's spending it on stand assignments. I'm not gonna bring it up. Don't look at me like that. You don't bring something up to that man, you wait for him to set it down in front of you, and he's not going to. He's going to die with it in his pocket.
Opening morning is 4:30 and black and 12 degrees. I'm in the pines by 5:50, with my back against a red pine that's older than the state, and my breath going up through the branches. And the light comes the way it comes in November, which is not like a sunrise, more like somebody very slowly turning up a dial in a gray room. The woods go from nothing to shapes with edges. A red squirrel starts up somewhere behind me and doesn't stop for 2 hours. My feet get cold in the way that stops being a temperature and starts being a fact about your life. I don't see a deer. I don't care. That's not really what I'm out here for, and it hasn't been for years. At 7:40, a shot goes off up on the ridge, and the sound comes down through the trees and flattens out across the swamp. And then there's nothing, which means Marcus killed it clean. By the time I get up there, he's already got it turned and the steam's coming off it into the cold. It's a 4x4, maybe 180 pounds. Nothing to write home about, but a good deer, a solid deer. The bullet went in behind the shoulder and out the far side, and it never took more than 4 steps. There's a spray of red across the frost, like somebody flicked a paintbrush, and it's already going stiff and dark at the edges. Cody comes up from the swamp with his rifle slung, and Dale comes last. And it takes Dale a long time, and Marcus and I both find things to look at while he covers the last 50 yards. Then the 4 of us are standing around it, and this is the part I've been coming back for 18 years to feel.
Quartering to me, maybe 55 yards, coming down off the bench where the oaks are. I had him for about 4 seconds. He never knew I was in the county. Cody, get the legs. Dad, sit down on that stump. I mean it. I'm not asking. Ruben, you want to open him or you want to hold?
I open him. You start with the deer on his back, with the legs spread and somebody holding. And you make a shallow cut through the hide at the bottom of the breastbone. Just through the hide, because if you go deep here, you'll open the paunch, and then the meat's ruined, and you'll be smelling it for a week. You put 2 fingers in the cut, back of the hand toward the guts, blade riding between your fingers pointed up and away, and you unzip him down to the pelvis with the knife working against the inside of the hide. The hair opens white, and then the thin membrane underneath comes apart, and there's a sound to it, a wet ticking, like a seam pulling. Then the body cavity opens, and the heat comes out of him all at once into 12-degree air. And it's a column of steam standing up in the woods with all 4 of us in it. And it smells like copper and grass and something warm and personal that I have never been able to describe to anybody who hasn't stood in it. You reach up inside past the diaphragm with your arm in to the shoulder. Everything in there is slick and hot and heavier than you expect. You find the windpipe and the esophagus up in the neck by feel, and you cut them off high, and then you pull, and the whole works comes out in one piece, if you did it right. Lungs, heart, liver, stomach, all of it sliding out onto the frozen ground in a heap that steams and settles. You cut the diaphragm loose where it holds to the ribs. You free the last of it at the pelvis. You save the heart and the liver in a bread bag because Dale will eat them and because his father ate them. Then you roll the carcass over and let it drain, and the blood comes out of him in a rush that melts a hole down through the frost into black dirt, and there's a smell that gets in your coat and stays there until you wash it. My arms are red to the elbow and steaming. Cody's got a smear across his cheek from the back of his wrist. Marcus is hauling on a leg. Dale's on the stump watching us with his hands on his knees, and he's watching the way a man watches something he built. We drag him out. It takes 40 minutes to the 2-track, and then we've got him in the box of the truck and back at the shack, and we hang him on the meat pole with the gambrel through the tendons of the hind legs, and Marcus cranking the come-along, and the deer goes up into the cold with his front legs hanging down, and his open cavity facing out, and his tongue out the side of his mouth. That's how you do it. That's the whole thing. It's not cruel, and it isn't gentle either. It's just correct. and there's a satisfaction in doing it correctly that I don't apologize for. Dale comes over and puts a hand on the deer's shoulder and stands there a minute.
My dad used to say the animals owed the work. Not the prayer, not the talking to it, the work. You take it apart right, and you don't waste any of it, and you don't leave a mess behind you in the woods, and that's the whole debt, paid. And if you put one down and it walks off, you go get it. I don't care if it's dark, I don't care if it's 40 below, and you got work Monday. You do not leave a hurt animal in the woods overnight. That's the one rule up here. That's the only one I ever cared about.
Saturday afternoon, Dale has a bad spell. It comes on around 2 while we're eating sandwiches at the table, and it isn't dramatic. He just goes gray and sets his hands flat on the wood and closes his eyes and breathes very carefully in through the nose, out through the mouth 4 or 5 times, and Marcus stands up so fast his chair goes over backward. It passes. Dale opens his eyes and says he's fine and asks Marcus if he's going to pick up that chair or leave it there. Marcus picks up the chair. Nobody eats anything else. Cody goes outside and stays outside for 40 minutes. I find him out by the meat pole, and he's just standing under the deer with his hands in his pockets. And neither of us says anything about what happened in there because that's how it works up here. And we stand under a hanging carcass in the cold together for a while, which is a form of conversation. At 3:30, we go back out. There's about 90 minutes of shooting light left. Dale doesn't go. He says he's going to lay down, and he says it out loud, which is how bad it is. And Marcus decides to stay at the shack and doesn't offer a reason and doesn't need one. So, it's Cody and me. He should have taken the swamp edge again. That's the stand, and that's where the deer are, and that's where his father put him. Instead, he cuts west off the 2-track into the tag alder and the cattail on the far side of the flowage, which is thick, nasty, chest high. No shot lanes, no visibility, absolutely no reason to be in there. I know why he's in there. He's in there because he can't sit still in a stand with his own head for 90 minutes. I take the pines. I can see the top of his orange cap moving through the alder about 200 yards out, going away, and then I can't. The light goes. It goes fast in November. It doesn't fade so much as drain, and by 5 o'clock the swamp's a flat gray sheet and the tree line's a black wall, and I'm thinking about how many minutes are legal. At 5:08, I hear something move out in the alder. That is not a deer. Deer are loud. That's the thing nobody believes. A deer coming through cattail sounds like a truck. This is something taking a step and then waiting. A step and then a long nothing. Then another step, closer to Cody's side than mine. Then Cody's rifle goes off. And the sound that comes back isn't right. When you hit a deer solid, there's a whump you feel more than here, and then a crash as it runs, and the crash gets thinner and farther and then quits. What comes across the flowage instead is the shot, and then something enormous going down hard into the frozen muck, and then a scramble, a fast, wrong, 4-limbed scramble that lasts about 2 seconds, and then it stops. Not runs off, stops. Like something decided to stop making noise.
Ruben, over here, come here. I hit it hard. Hang on, okay. I had maybe a second of light on it. It was coming through that heavy stuff at about 40 yards, and I could see the top line and the shoulder, and I know. Don't say it. Look at this. Look at how much of it there is. That's a good hit. That's a lung hit. It's gotta be down in 100 yards. Why is there no hair? You always get hair.
He's right. There's no hair. You hit a deer, and the bullet punches a plug of hollow gray-brown hair out the entrance. And it lays in the leaves like somebody emptied a razor. It's the first thing you look for. It tells you where you hit and how bad and whether to push or wait. There's no hair anywhere in that muck. What there is blood, and there's a lot of it. And it's wrong too. It's on the cattail stalks at about chest height on me, not shin height. Not the sprayed low spatter you get off an animal that stands 3.5 feet at the shoulder. It's smeared up the stems at 5 feet, and it's smeared in a way that suggests something went through here holding a wound. And it's dark, almost black in the flashlight, with an oil sheen coming off the top of it. It's 12 degrees out here, and it isn't skinning over. It isn't stiffening at the edges the way Marcus's buck did in the frost by 7:40 this morning. I put my glove in it, and it comes away wet and stays wet. And there's a smell coming up off it that is not iron and grass and warm animal. It smells like the bottom of a stock tank. It smells like a wet basement. I stand up and I tell him, we're not going in there tonight. I tell him the light's gone, the wind's swinging, we've got no idea what he hit, and there's 1,000 acres of tag alder between us and the county line. I tell him a lung-hit deer will lay down in 90 yards and be dead in 10 minutes and be right there in the morning, cold and stiff and easy, and that pushing it in the dark is how you jump it and lose it entirely. All of that is true. It's what any guide in this county would tell you. It's also not the reason, and he knows it isn't, because my voice is doing something I can't get control of. And I've known this kid since we were 9 years old, and he can hear it. We walk back with our lights off, because I want to hear. Behind us, out in the alder, something takes a step, and then waits.
There is a thing out there right now with a hole in it that we put there, and it is not going to have a good night, and that is on us. Marcus, get the good light and the drag rope. Cody, you're leading. It's your animal. We're going now.
I want it on the record that I said it twice. The second time I said it in the yard with the truck lights on and all three of them standing there in their orange, and I said the blood was wrong, and Marcus asked me what wrong meant, and I didn't have an answer that would have sounded like anything except a man who is scared of the dark in woods he's hunted for 18 years. That's the thing about being the friend. I get a plate at the table. I get to stand with my name on it. I get to help open his son's deer with my bare hands in the frost. I have never once gotten a vote. It's not cruelty. Nobody's ever been anything but good to me here. It's just that when this family decides something, the deciding happens somewhere I'm not, in a room made out of blood, and what I get is the result. So I take a flashlight and I go. We're in the cattail by 6:20. Marcus has the big handheld, and it turns the alder into a white tunnel with black on both sides of it and nothing overhead. Cody's ahead of him picking up the trail. Dale's behind me. I keep listening for Dale's breathing and hating myself for listening for it. The blood's easy at first. That's the awful part. It's the best trail I've ever followed. You don't have to hunt for the next spot. It's just there. A line of it going west into the heavy stuff. And it keeps not clotting, and it goes up the stalks at chest height. And at 40 yards, there's a smear of it on a broken tamarack at the height of my face. At about 70 yards, we lose the water and get onto a low ridge of hard ground. And that's where the tracks start. There's a drag mark. Something wide went through here on its side, and running out of both ends of that drag are prints in the frost. And there are 2 of them, and they're a stride and a half apart, and the stride is longer than mine. Marcus puts the light on them, and everybody stops. They're not hooves, they're not paws. There's a long, flat contact patch, and then 4 points at the front of it that dig in deep, like something walking on the ball of a foot, with the toes hooked into the dirt for grip, and the whole print is close to 16 inches from front to back. Cody says a bear. Marcus says a bear doesn't walk two-legged for 40 feet. Cody says they do, sometimes. They will. Dale doesn't say anything. Dale is looking off the trail, out into the black on the left side of us, and he's got his head tipped, like a man listening to a car engine. We follow it another 120 yards. Then the tracks stop, not fade. not get lost in leaves. They stop, mid-stride, in soft, frozen mud that's holding everything perfectly. And there is nothing for 40 yards. And then on the far side of that 40 yards, they start again with the blood, going the same direction, same stride. I've been in these woods since I was 14. Every year, every November. Nothing crosses 40 yards of open ground without touching it. Behind us, out in the alder, something takes a step and then waits.
Everybody, just stand still a second. Kill your lights, all of them. Cody, kill it. You hear that? Northwest of us. 200 yards, maybe less. Something's up on that hard ridge where the oaks are, and it's moving parallel to us. It's been doing it for a while. It stops when we stop. I'm going to go up and put eyes on it. If that's a hurt bear, and it's circling us in the dark, we need to know that before it decides. I'll be 10 minutes. Give me 10 minutes and then holler for me.
We give him 10 minutes. Then we give him 10 more, because Dale says it's thick up there. And to give him 10 more, and I stand in the dark in the tag alder, next to a dying man and his youngest son, and I count. At the 22-minute mark, Dale hollers for him. His voice out here doesn't carry the way it used to, and I hear how much it costs him. And after the third one, Cody takes over, and Cody's got a young man's voice, and it goes out across the flowage, and comes back off the far tree line and goes out again. And we do that for a while. There's no answer. There's no shot. That's what gets me first, standing there. If a bear comes at a man in the dark at 10 feet, that's a shot. Marcus has been shooting since he was 10 years old, and he had a 30-06 on a sling on his shoulder and a light in his hand, and he did not fire it, not once, and there was no yell either. We go up the ridge. His light's on the ground about 90 yards in, still on, pointed back the way he came, and it's throwing a long white cone across the oak leaves and up the trunk of a red oak, and the beam's full of our breath when we get to it. His rifle's 12 feet from the light, sling down, action closed, safety on. There's no blood, there's no drag. The leaves aren't even kicked up, and oak leaves in November are like a floor of dry paper. You cannot cross them without leaving a story. There's Marcus's boot prints coming up the ridge, and there's a scuff patch where he stopped and turned around. And that's all there is. Cody starts screaming his brother's name, and he does not stop for a long time, and I don't stop him, and Dale doesn't either. Dale picks up his son's rifle and works the bolt and catches the shell in his hand and looks at it. And then he stands there holding a live round in his fist and his mouth open a little, and the light's on the ground behind him, so I can't see his face, and I'm grateful for that. I get out my phone. There's no service on this property, and there never has been, and I hold it up over my head anyway like an idiot, like a man in a commercial, turning in a circle in the dark. We search until 1:15 in the morning. We grit it the way you'd grit a wounded deer. We do the ridge and the bench and the whole east side of the flowage, and I put my hands into brush piles up to my shoulders. Somewhere in there, I stop being able to feel my fingers, and I don't notice until later. Dale falls twice. The second time he can't get up on his own, and I have to get an arm under him, and he lets me, which frightens me worse than anything that's happened. At 1:15, he says, we go back and get the truck and drive to the tavern at the corner and use the phone there. It's 22 miles. It's the first sensible thing anyone said since 5 o'clock. So we walk back to the shack. I see it before either of them do. Because I'm ahead. Because I've got the light. There's something hanging on the meat pole next to the buck. He's up on the gambrel. Somebody took Marcus's boots and his socks off, and his bare feet are about a foot off the frozen ground, with the toes pointed down, and the steel of the gambrel is through the tendons above his heels the same way it goes through a deer, and his arms hang down past his head, with the knuckles almost touching the dirt. He's been opened. Sternum to pelvis, one pass, the shallow cut through the hide first, and then the deeper work. And it is a good cut. It's a clean cut. It doesn't wander. Whoever did it kept the blade riding up and away and did not nick the paunch, because there's no green in it, there's no smell of that, and any man who's done this 100 times would look at that cut and know it was done right. The cavity's empty and it's been washed out. There's a wet, dark ring in the frost underneath him, where the blood went down and melted through into the dirt. The exact same hole in the exact same frost as this morning, 40 feet from where I stood, with my arms steaming to the elbow. The heart and the liver are in a bread bag, hanging off the corner post nail. The come-along's been let back down and recranked, and the paws set. Somebody hoisted him with the same tool, on the same pole, at the same height as the deer, and lined the two of them up so there's about 4 feet between them, so they'd both cool. That's the thing I can't get past. Standing in the yard with my light on him. Everything's correct. Nothing is torn. Nothing's been eaten. The work is careful, and it is unhurried, and it is exactly the work we did this morning in front of an audience. And it was finished and squared away and put in order, and then whatever did it went back out into the dark and left it hanging to age. Cody's light comes up behind me and I turn and put my hand flat on his chest and he goes right through it. Dale is the one who makes the sound. It comes out of him from somewhere below his lungs, and it doesn't have any words in it. And I have to take hold of him with both arms because his legs quit, and I go down onto my knees in the frozen yard, holding 200 pounds of a man I've loved since I was 14 years old, while his son screams at his other son on the meat pole.
Get him down. Get him down off there right now, Ruben. Do not stand there. Get my boy down off of that pole. His feet are bare. Why are his feet bare? Who took his boots off him? Put that light out. Get it off him. Don't look at him like that. Don't look at your brother like that.
We get him down. It takes all three of us, and it takes a long time because Dale won't let it be done fast and won't let it be done rough, and because the gambrel has to come out of him, and I do that part with Cody holding the weight and Dale holding his son's head off the ground, and I'm not going to say any more about that. We put him in the shack on the bunk, on top of a sleeping bag that says Coleman on the side of it, and Dale gets a wool blanket over him and takes his time getting it straight, corners squared, the way you do a bed. Then we sit in there with the stove ticking and the lantern hissing and my hands shaking so bad I can't get the coffee can open. It's 1:40 in the morning. It's 10 degrees. The trucks are 1.5 miles down the 2-track at the end of the road where the low spot is, because you don't drive in past the low spot in November. You never have. And there's 1.5 miles of jack pine between us and them. Marcus had the keys to his. Marcus's keys are not on Marcus. Dale's keys are on the hook by the door, and Dale's truck is the one parked crooked in the yard. I say we go. Right now, all three of us, we get in Dale's truck, and we drive out, and we don't stop until we're at the tavern with the lights on. Dale says he's not leaving Marcus in the shack. I tell him Marcus is dead. I say it out loud in that little room, and it's the worst thing I've ever done, and I do it again. And I say we come back with the sheriff and 40 men, and we come back in the daylight. And that Marcus doesn't care anymore where he is, but Cody's 28, and he's standing right there. Dale looks at me for a long moment, and then he says the thing that I understand is the end of the argument, which is that his son is not going to lay in a shack alone in the woods with that outside, and that if I want to take Cody and go, I should take Cody and go. And he says it kindly. He says it the way he handed me a box of shells in a gravel pit outside Deer River when I was in 8th grade. Cody won't leave his father. Of course he won't. He's got a dead brother, 30 inches away, under a wool blanket, and a father with months left, and a bullet of his own out in that swamp. And this is the one time in his life that leaving isn't a thing he's able to do. So nobody goes anywhere. So we sit up. At 2:10, something walks around the outside of the shack. Slow. All the way around, one full circuit. and it's not trying to be quiet on the gravel, and it stops on the north wall where the window is. The window's got frost on the inside. Nothing looks in, but something stands there long enough that I can hear it breathing through the wall, and it is a big, slow, deliberate breathing, like a horse in a stall, and underneath it there's another sound I know. It's a whetstone. It's the exact sound of a blade being drawn on a stone, unhurried, 4 inches at a time, and it goes on for a minute and a half. Then it walks off toward the meat pole, and then there's nothing until first light.
It was me. I'm the one who put a hole in it, and it came here, and it did that to him, and that's not a thing you can argue me out of. Dad, look at me. Please, just look at me one time. I'm going to go get the truck. I'm faster than both of you. I know every foot of that 2-track, and I'll be at the low spot in 15 minutes and back in 25. You keep him here. You keep him inside, and you keep the door shut, and you do not open it for me until you hear me lay on the horn.
He goes at 7:10, in the gray, with his rifle and no pack. We watch him from the door until the 2-track bends, and then Dale shuts it and puts the bar across. And we stand there in a shack with his dead son on the bunk, and neither of us says anything for a while. The daylight makes it worse. That's not what I expected. In the dark, you can hold on to the idea that you're wrong about some of it. But at 7:40 in flat gray daylight, I can see the drag marks in the frost of the yard, and I can see where Marcus's bare feet dragged from the tree line, and I can follow that line back with my eyes to where it comes out of the jack pine on the northwest side, and I can see that whatever brought him back to camp came out of the exact stretch of woods where we lost his tracks. At 8:15, we hear the shot. One shot from the direction of the low spot, and it's Cody's rifle. I know his rifle. Then nothing for about 4 seconds, and then 2 more. Fast, way too fast. A man firing at something that is already on top of him. Dale is at the door before I am, and I get between him and it. And for a second, that man puts his hands on my chest and shoves me with everything he's got left. And it's almost nothing, and that's how I know for certain we're not going to get out of here. I go instead. He stands in the doorway and lets me. I'm 400 yards down the 2-track when I find the first of it. There's a spray of red across the frozen ruts and up the trunk of a jack pine at about head height. And Cody's rifle is in the middle of the trail with the bolt open and the magazine empty. There's a drag going off into the pines on the left, and the drag is not a smooth slide. It goes in stages. Something carried the weight, and then set it down, and then picked it up again, unhurried, the way a man moves a hay bale. I follow it about 60 yards in. I find the boots first, standing upright, set neatly side by side at the base of a tree, with the socks folded on top of them. I find the rest 20 feet past that, and I'm going to leave most of it alone, except to say that it isn't finished. It's been started the same way, the shallow cut through the hide from the breastbone down, one clean, unhurried pass, and it's been opened, and then it was left. There's no pole out here to hang him on. It's laid out on its back in the leaves, with the arms out and everything steaming into the cold. And the steam is what tells me how long ago. And the answer is that whatever did this heard me coming and set my friend down and stepped away. It's standing about 30 yards off in the pines. I know that the way you know somebody's behind you in a hallway. I don't turn my head. I get one thing in the corner of my eye, and I get it for less than a second. The top of it is higher than it should be, higher than the low branches, 7 feet or better, and it's the color of wet bark, and there's a long pale line down the front of it where the throat would be. It doesn't move when I look. It doesn't move at all. It stands there in the trees with a stillness that is not an animal's stillness, and it waits for me to decide. I walk backward out of those pines for 60 yards without ever putting my back to it, and it lets me. Cody is 9 years old at the pit, behind the school, with a bag of green apples, and the two of us have a slingshot. Cody is 19 in the hallway outside my mother's room, with his elbows on his knees for 5 hours, saying nothing, staying. Cody is 28 last night on the step, with his hood up looking at the meat pole, saying his father's going to die with it in his pocket. I've got his rifle in my hand, and it's empty, and I carry it all the way back anyway. Dale's on the step when I come up the rise. He's got his coat on, and he's sitting down on the second step with his forearms on his knees and his rifle across them, and he watches me come the whole way, and he watches my hands, and he sees I'm carrying his son's rifle and not his son, and he doesn't ask. I sit down next to him. It's about 9:30 in the morning. The wind swung south overnight the way he said it would, and it's warming up, which means the frost is going off the yard, which means by afternoon the marks in it will be gone. He asks me if it was fast, and I tell him yes, and that's the only lie I have ever told that man in 18 years. We sit there a while. He tells me about a dog he had in 1969 named Buster that would ride in the boat and go in after ducks and hated thunder. He tells me his wife made him quit smoking in 94 by throwing a full carton in the burn barrel and standing there with a hose while he watched. He tells me Marcus put that green roof on in July when it was 92 degrees and never once complained, and Cody carried the shingles up the ladder for him all day. Both of them at it, 16 and 20 and not talking, and that he sat right on this step and watched his two boys work on his roof, and that it's the best day he ever had. Then he tells me that the arrangement was wrong, that the not saying it was wrong, that he had a whole year of knowing, and he spent it on stand assignments and gravel for the washout, and he had a son who needed one sentence out of him, and he had months to say it, and he thought there'd be a better time. I tell him Cody knew. I tell him Cody knew, and I've got no idea if it's true, and I don't care. Around 10, he says my name and tells me to take the truck. I tell him I'm not doing that. He says he's got maybe 8 weeks, and he's got 2 dead sons, and he cannot walk 1.5 miles, and that if I stay, we both stay, and it doesn't get anybody anything. He says it flat and reasonable, like the man reading a plat map at a table with a lantern on the corner of it. I tell him I'm not doing that, and I say it twice, and this time it's my family that decided. He looks at me for a long moment. Then he reaches over and puts one of those enormous hands on the back of my neck, the way he did exactly once before in a gravel pit outside Deer River, when a 14-year-old kid finally quit flinching. He says I was always one of his.
There's a box of shells in the drawer under the propane. Not the soft points, the other ones, in the green box. You keep that stove hot, and you keep that door barred, and you sit with your back to the west wall so you can see the window and the door both. Don't shoot through the wall. You wait until you've got it. And Ruben, if it gets to be that you can't, if it comes to that, you don't owe anybody a thing. You never did. You gave this family 18 years for free.
He goes out at 11:40 to check the trail camera on the north line. I know that's a lie when he says it. He knows I know. He does it anyway because it lets us both stand there in the doorway and have it be about a trail camera. And he takes his rifle and he goes down off the rise slow with his hand out for the trees, and I watch him until the jack pine takes him. He doesn't come back, and there's no shot. That's how it goes with him. At the end, no noise at all. 80 acres and a green roof and 2 boys and a hand on the back of my neck, and then the woods just close up over the top of him like water. I'm not going to go looking. That's the thing he was buying with the lie, and I'm going to let him have it. It's Sunday afternoon. The sun's somewhere behind the gray, and it's already sliding west, and I've got a barrel stove and a bar across the door and 11 rounds, and there's 1.5 miles of 2-track between me and a truck I can't get to because it's out there in that 1.5 miles. It let me walk backward for 60 yards this morning. It stood in the pines and it did not move, and it did not need to. I understand what it's doing now. I've understood since about 2 in the morning, and I've been refusing to hold it in my hands. It isn't hunting us. It's dressing us out. We put a hole in something on Saturday at 5:08, and it took the work, and it did the work back, exactly and correctly, in the order we did it. It hung Marcus on the pole with the deer, 4 feet apart, so they'd cool right. It kept the heart and the liver in a bread bag on the nail, because that's what it saw us do. It set Cody's boots upright, with the socks folded on top, because it's careful and it doesn't leave a mess in the woods. The debt's paid the same way every time. That's the only rule up here. That's the only one it ever cared about. The frost is off the yard. The drag marks are gone. The meat pole's empty, and the come-along's hanging on the nail on the corner post where it's hung since before I was born, and the buck is still up there. Ours, stiff now, 180 pounds of the last good morning any of us will ever have. It's 4:10. There's about 90 minutes of shooting light. I've got my back to the west wall like he told me, and I can see the door, and I can see the square of gray window, and the stove's ticking, and I've counted these 11 shells so many times I could do it with my hands off. At 4:20 something walks around the outside of the shack, one full circuit, slow, not trying to be quiet. It stops on the north wall. I can hear it breathing through the tar paper, big and even and unhurried, and I make myself raise the rifle and put the front sight on the middle of that wall and hold it there with my elbows on my knees the way he taught me in a gravel pit when I was 14 years old. And my arms are steady. They're finally steady. He'd be, and then it starts up with the stone. 4 inches at a time, unhurried. And I sit here in my father's shack with my back to the west wall, listening to it, get that blade sharp enough to do the work right. And I keep thinking, over and over, the same stupid thing, that if I can just hold on until dark, if the light goes and it has to come through that door where I can...